Okay. Forgive me that bit of over dramatic intro. Hey, how's it going? I'm Jason. Thank you for coming. We have a full house. I'm super excited. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the seven things we can learn about magic and reality from Dr. John Dee, or 007 things you can learn about reality from Dr. John Dee, as Dee was the original 007. So, I'm going to talk for about an hour, and we don't have too much more time. And then I'll take questions, and then we'll do book signing for anyone who wants to grab a book. And in this talk, I'm not just going to be talking at you, because I hate just talking at people. We're going to be talking about magic, but we're also going to be doing magic. So, which means we're going to do some, I don't know, you could call them guided visualizations. And I'm going to walk you through a few things to get you ready to talk about warping reality and alchemically fuddling with the nature of existence, which is my favorite topic. So if you're up for that, great. If you're not okay with that, that's okay too, but I won't be offended if you don't want to do that and you don't want to participate and you want to walk out when we do that. That's okay. But if you're ready for that, stand up. And finally, with me, breathe out one long sigh of relief. Because you've made it, you're here at Mortlake Company with me. You've somehow karmically evolved through the ranks of minerals, animals, and higher human life forms to the point where you're interested in esoteric material, at least enough to spend a Saturday night with this weird guy talking about it. So pat yourself on the back and high five the person next to you. Oh, yes, okay. And you can be seated now. So the subject of our talk is Dr. John Dee, who of course is the individual that I wrote this book about, John Dee and the Empire of Angels. Why is first of all, who is Dr. Dee and why is Dr. Dee important? So what? So Dr. Dee was an alchemist who lived in the 16th century. He was an early scientist. He was an astrologer. He was the scientific advisor to Elizabeth I in primarily the 1560s, 1570s, 1580s. He predates the birth of modern science. So he predates Isaac Newton and people like this. However, he is one of the last true scientists to assess the idea of magic and take it seriously as I would say a branch of the sciences, but this was before things were separated. It's when magic and science and alchemy and astrology and astronomy and all these things were seen as one thing, and that was just the study of reality. What is reality? Why are we here? And John Dee happens to be probably the most important figure of the entire Western esoteric tradition. He's the guy that we get modern magic from, the guy that we get the core of the Golden Dawn, Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry, Thelema, and possibly all the way into the modern world with Satanism and even witchcraft. So he's the guy. If you're interested in the occult, as I assume you all are because you're all here, he's the guy. He's the big progenitor of the entire field. Okay, now again, so what? The occult. Okay, great. John Dee is also the guy that invented the phrase the British Empire. He's the guy that came up with not just the schematics and the math and the imperial planning necessary to turn England from a country that was a tiny, impoverished, what we might call developing country, into the greatest empire the world has ever known, the empire on which the sun never sets, so-called because at the height of the empire, there was literally nowhere in the entire world during which the sun was not shining. And what that means is that John Dee is kind of the guy who laid down the blueprint, if you will, for the world that we find ourselves in now. Because of course, from the British Empire, we get the American Empire and global capitalism, global empire. The empire never ended, as Philip K. Dick put it. And more interestingly than that, Dee claimed that the idea for empire was given to him by the Archangel Michael because he was a full-time practicing occultist. And when we study Dee, we understand that the idea of magic and the occult is fundamentally wrapped up with not just kind of, now we know magic and the occult is kind of an outsider pursuit. It's something that that we've all found our way to, looking on the fringes of our culture. But when you look at the higher echelons of world history, you see that it has been central to the construction of everything. So, when we're studying Dee, we're studying the guy who wrote the computer code of the modern world with the help of angels. So, now that that's gone by, close your eyes. And I want you to feel a blue light coming up from the tips of your feet, a blue light that carries relaxation, spreading up from your toes to the soles of your feet and your ankles, and up your lower legs, and through your knees, and through your upper legs, pelvis, abdomen, front of your abdomen, your lower back, bringing relaxation, bliss, peace, contentment at 1 minute, up through the front of your chest, your upper back, and then starting at your fingertips, spreading up your fingers through your hands, wrists, lower arms, elbows, upper arms, shoulders, collarbone, the front of your neck, back of your neck, the front of your face, the back of your head, ears, and finally to the very tippy top of your skull, your crown chakra. And now you find yourself in the rainforest with no humans, nothing but perfect, pristine, clean, clear nature. And this is the Garden of Eden. See the deep, verdant leaves and vines and the trees. There might be a hint of maybe some birds off in the distance, but nothing is moving too much. There's dew collected on the leaves, a little bit of light misting rain. You can smell the clean scent of rain having just recently fallen. You feel a very, very light breeze playing on your backs of your hands. Now, the Garden of Eden is our state at all times. It is the dawn of humanity. It is the end of humanity. It is where we started and where we are going. And more than that, it is where we already are. The Garden of Eden is at all times and at all places in one single shining instance that encapsulates all time and all history and all space. And you might be hearing in your head your own voice, the voice that perhaps is not so sure about this, the voice that doubts perhaps that we are in the Garden of Eden and will be in the Garden of Eden and have always been in the Garden of Eden. It's in the trees. It's coming. The voice you're hearing is the voice of fear, the voice of doubt, the voice of the deceiver, the voice that tells us that we are not enlightened and the crown is not in the kingdom, as the kingdom is not in the crown. And that is the only thing that is keeping you from perceiving the divine perfection of existence now. So, when you're ready, let go of it and know where you are. An apocalypse means, in Greek, lifting the veil. And the veil is the perceptual filter that has kept you from perceiving the essence of reality your entire life. And that is the veil that is lifted by Enochian Magic, bit by bit, until you remember where you are. So, when you're ready, return to your body, feel the backs of your hands, and slowly begin to come back to here and now, which is exactly where you just were. So the topic of our talk is the 007 things that John Dee can teach us about magic and reality. That's just the prelude. So the first thing that John Dee can teach us about magic and the nature of reality is quite simple. It's that magic is real. And not only is magic real, but magic can and has many times changed the world. So what is magic? A lot of you watching this may have some idea what magic is or may have experimented with it yourself. Magic is very simple. Magic is the ability of human beings to extrude their consciousness and their will into existence through any means necessary. Now, that often includes ritual procedures and parameters. It includes what we might recognize as ceremonial magic, but really it extends to any human activity whatsoever. Magic, as I've come to learn in the last 20 years of doing it, is not quite what they say it is in the books. Magic is a spontaneously emergent principle of human consciousness and of the universe itself. It just happens. It's something that we become aware of, and it's a process that we learn to participate in. Now, every time somebody asks me what magic is, I give a different definition of what it is. But every time I give a definition, just bear in mind, that's the 100% accurate definition of what magic is. And it's always the 100% accurate definition of what magic is. And so if I give you a different definition of magic later in this talk, that will be the 100% accurate definition of what magic is. So magic is the art and science, as Crowley put it, of causing change in conformity with will. It is the art and science, as Dion Fortune put it, of causing change in consciousness in conformity with will. And I think that's probably a better way to look at it. It's a way of tuning our consciousness. And this is, by the way, the 100% accurate definition of what magic is. It's a way of tuning our consciousness to change band from normally we focus on the ritual of waking up, going to work, sitting in a car, coming home, watching TV, interacting with the people closest to us. That's our ritual. But that's just one possible configuration of human consciousness in the entire universe, which is infinite. So magic allows us to change the tuning, to zero in and focus on something else, whether that's what we're trying to extrude into the world, or whether it's perhaps contacting supernatural beings like angels, which is what John Dee and Edward Kelly did. Now, people have been doing magic since the dawn of history. Like I said, in my original 100% accurate definition of what magic is, it is a spontaneously emergent principle of human consciousness. People have been doing it since the dawn of history. People were doing it in the caves. People were doing it as Paleolithic shamans. People are doing it now through the media, through neurolinguistic programming, through social media. Everyone's trying to impose their will on the world. And in the 16th century, it was done through very technical procedures of scrying and trying to contact angels and higher beings in order to seek their aid and petition their aid in changing reality. And this is something that's happened many times. In the 16th century, John Dee and Edward Kelly contacted the angels and spent 10 years. Now, Dee, of course, is the scientist I've told you about. Edward Kelly is the psychic or scryer that he worked with. And together they formed a working partnership and spent almost 10 years doing nothing but talking to angels, angels that claimed to give them the original language of humanity that was spoken before the fall from the Garden of Eden, angels that gave them, or gave Dee, the idea for a British Empire, angels that gave them the schematics for creating a new and totalizing new world order, for lack of a better word, which we'll touch on in a second. And so one of the reasons that I've written this book is to show that magic has been at the heart not only of empire, but it's been the causal engine behind things like the creation of the US space program through Jack Parsons, who also practiced Dee and Kelly's magic and Crowley's magic. It's been behind all kinds of political efforts. We've seen it in action in geopolitics in the last few years, whether it was people doing magic on the side or of the Republican Party or against the Republican Party. We saw it in the Ukrainian occultist Alexander Dugin, who is an advisor to Vladimir Putin, directly doing occult activities to influence reality in the direction of shifting the geopolitical locus of control to Russia. So this is not just simply a historical subject. This has been going on since the beginning of time. And so it's no surprise that governments have investigated this and that people like John Dee, again, the original 007, would have been instrumental in creating the British secret societies, or excuse me, of course the British secret societies, but also the British secret services, MI5 and MI6, and the ones that later Crowley and Gurdjieff and Blavatsky participated in. So in studying Dee and studying magic, we're not just studying some type of kooky outsider art activity. We're really studying the secret history of the world. It's often overlooked because it's so strange. And they obviously did not teach you this history in school because it's so strange. And it's also a history that once you fully understand it, you begin to understand how up for grabs the nature of reality is. You begin to understand how anybody, theoretically, can change the course of world history simply by applying a few occult principles. A very dangerous idea that I'm perhaps unwisely bringing out to the public right now. But that's me. That seems to be what I'm doing with my life right now. So, if magic is real, what now? So, principle number 2 we can learn from the work of John Dee and Edward Kelly. Angels are real, or real in a sense. So this is something that we are quite skeptical about in the modern world. The existence of supernatural beings, the existence of extra-human intelligences, praetor-human intelligences. But to understand what angels are, we need to get past the Hallmark card version of it and understand how they were spoken of in the Elizabethan time period. When we're talking about angels, we're not talking about, I don't know, like something from a WB show, an angel manifesting with wings to I do an occult ritual and an angel manifests a visible appearance right there with a flaming sword and tells me to go to church more. When we're talking about angels, we're talking about living information. We're talking about beings that live in the world of mind. Beings that live, that can be contacted perhaps through dreams, altered states of consciousness, whether that's the psychedelic experience or in a better form of that, a more controlled form, is the magical and occult experience. Doing magical rituals to briefly alter consciousness for short periods of time that leave us open to interacting with those other levels of reality. So if you've ever done an occult ritual, raise your hand and say aye. Okay, so about half of you. And if you've ever been interested in doing an occult ritual, raise your hand, and including if you've done one, raise your hand and say aye. Okay, so the whole room. So what is magic? Well, okay, so this is the 100% accurate definition of exactly what magic is. Magic is a set of, and we're going to be doing some tomorrow, by the way, it's a set of rituals, or a set of ritual procedure that are very precise. It really is an art and a science that is designed to shift your consciousness for brief periods of time from the material world to the world that we might consider the world of dreams, or the world of imagination, so-called, or the world of intuition and inspiration and perhaps slight hypnotic trance, in order to interact with reality as it is on those levels. Now, we're always interacting with that level all the time. So if you've ever been walking down the street and suddenly a genius idea popped into your head, whether that's an idea for something that you should write, or something that you should do with your life, or just a good, like a good line or something like that. Something you should say to somebody in your life to help something go in your life. Well, then you've interacted directly with that plane of existence. You've interacted with, the astral world, as magicians call it, and but very briefly. And so we're always interacting with this level of reality all the time. When we do magical ritual, we heighten our focus and shift our reality solely to that level of existence to interact with it exclusively for short periods of time. And the reason that it's short periods of time is otherwise you get too ungrounded. There's lots of people, and perhaps some of you know people like this, who become purely mystic and try to, do psychedelics all the time and go totally kind of off the deep end. And that's not the path of magic. The path of magic is set and setting, as Timothy Leary called it. Ritual parameters for shifting into magical consciousness for short periods of time and then coming back so that you can get on with the rest of your life with just what you wanted, just the specific information that you wanted without getting overloaded by something like, for instance, 6 hours of tripping on psilocybin mushrooms, which is not particularly productive sometimes. Okay. So this is where we meet angels. And so to go back to our example, if you have suddenly had a moment of inspiration where a brilliant idea popped into your head and you have no idea where that came from, people today might say, well, that's the unconscious mind. Elizabethans, people in John Dee's time would say, well, this is angels. This is how angels manifest, right? Angels live in the world of ideas. The Elizabethans believed, as they did in the Middle Ages, that there were angels set over everything in the material world. So each person has a guardian angel. As William Blake and Emanuel Swedenborg so poetically put it, there's an angel over the head of every blade of grass telling it, grow, grow, right? So the Elizabethan conception of the world is that angels basically are the clockwork mechanism that's the graded intelligence that's set over everything in the manifest world to make it work. Now, in the Elizabethan world, the other idea was that angels were the next level of evolution above humans, right? So if you imagine God at the top of the scale of existence, below God you would have angels, below angels you would have human beings, and below human beings you would have the animals. And then of course below the animals you would have minerals or plants, and then minerals, and then below that you would have the demonic realms. But the idea, this was called the Great Chain of Being, and this was the hierarchy running the entire universe, which was perfect and wonderful, and the only thing that ever caused chaos to happen in it was human sin, and humans taking unwise actions. So the idea of Elizabethan magic, which is the idea that underpins really all magic today, is that if humans are to evolve, the best way to do that is by contacting the next layer of beings above human beings, which is angels. So angels don't have bodies, but they can be contacted in ways that, like I was just talking about, through occult ritual, through dreams, inspiration, even perhaps through poetry and art. And the idea there being that, as I've congratulated you for as you first came in, that we're on an upward arc of evolution, that we are evolving, and we've gone through minerals and animals and the ranks of humans, and now to get to the next level, we should speak to the next rank of beings above us, which is angels. And this is exactly what John Dee set out to do, and it's exactly what the Western Hermetic tradition has set out to do, and all of the magicians since, in most of them. And that is to repair the fallen nature of humanity. Human beings are fallen. They are, we're not really that smart. We don't really have that many capabilities. We get about 70 years, give or take, on the planet to run around, bounce against the walls, hit our head against reality, try to figure it out, and then that's it. But angels live on a much longer timeline. They have much more capability to influence reality. So magic, per se, and this is the 100% definition of magic. And by the way, this is also the most important thing I will say tonight. So if you don't take anything else away from this, take this away, which is that the Elizabethan conception of magic is not that human beings do magic, it's that it's the whole point of magic is to contact angels in order to understand your place in the universe and petition their aid in making your life work. Because once you've discovered your orbit, once you've discovered your true will, as later magicians put it, once you've discovered your reason for existence, then you're working with the current of evolution, you're working with the universe, and life becomes magical. How many people have ever been in a period in your life where suddenly synchronicities have been coming out of the wall and all these unlikely coincidences have been happening? Raise your hand and say aye. Okay, so basically everyone. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is what happens when you enter into these flow states it could be through magic or it could be through anything. It happens when you are in a flow state pursuing your true calling, which is different for everyone. It could be, writing, it could be skateboarding, it could be being a graphic artist, whatever it might happen to be. When we're in the flow of fulfilling our purpose, our nature, or as the Elizabethans would say, being in line with our holy guardian angel, that's when the universe does that to let us know that we're on the right track. Okay, so I keep getting the Wi-Fi. So the third thing, here's where we start to get into geopolitics. The third thing that we can learn about magic from John Dee is that there is a Western esoteric tradition. There is a secret occult tradition that has been running underneath the floorboards in our, for a couple thousand years, but in its current form, which is more or less founded on the ideas that I just described for the last 500 years, since John Dee. He's really the genesis point for the Western esoteric tradition as we currently understand it. Before Dee, it was wrapped up in the Gomorrah tradition and things like that, but there is a specific occult tradition and path that has been active in Western civilization for many hundreds of years. But we don't know about it. We've gotten little fragments of it. And it's a spiritual path as profound, or perhaps more profound, I might argue, than things like Vajrayana, Tibetan Buddhism, or Advaita Vedanta in the Eastern esoteric traditions, or Sufism, or all these esoteric paths that we have in the world. As René Guénon, the traditionalist author, once argued, every religion in the world has an exoteric and an esoteric branch. So there's the version of the religion for, the people, the churchgoers, the people who just need to see the show. And then there's the version of the religion that's practiced behind closed doors, where people are actually investigating techniques for directly engaging with other levels of reality and altering consciousness. Example being, so obviously in Islam, there's esoteric Islam, and then there's Sufism, which is esoteric Islam. In Catholicism, there's esoteric Catholicism, the Catholic Church, and then there's the holy orders, the Jesuits, the Franciscans, the Dominicans, all the ones that are engaged in techniques for altering consciousness. Or in Hinduism, there's Tantra, there's external Hinduism, and then there's Tantra, the esoteric branch. Same with Buddhism. Tantra Tantra means magic, right? Tantra, so esoteric Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism. Now, I argue in this book, and in fact, my central thesis of this book is the Western esoteric tradition, by which I mean starting with Dee, progressing into Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry, the Golden Dawn, Thelema, Satanism, witchcraft, just some degenerated form, and various other places, is the esoteric core of Protestantism. The Western esoteric tradition is the direct counterpart of the holy orders in Catholicism. So in Catholicism, we had the Jesuits, as I mentioned, the Dominicans, the Franciscans, the ones who were in charge of leading the charge of keeping the show going and spreading Catholicism. Protestantism had the same thing. It's just called the Rosicrucians in its many forms. And it comes directly from Dee. And the whole point of the Western esoteric tradition was to create a world of intellectual freedom away from the grasp of the Catholic Church, a world in which science could flourish, a world in which people could be free to pursue their individual will, their individual true will, as I've just described, instead of being top-down dominated by a church structure, right? And so we see it not only in the Brexit, if you will, of England from Rome under Henry VIII, but we see it in the work of John Dee, and we see it with all these secret societies who spent a couple hundred years trying to break the hold of the Catholics, trying to do things like found America along Rosicrucian and Masonic ideals, like with the Freemasonic founding fathers, in order to create the world of intellectual freedom and ability for open scientific inquiry that we enjoy today. And this is a direct outpouring of Dee's work and of the Western esoteric tradition. It's not an opposition. Science is not in opposition to magic. It's the child of magic. Alchemy is the parent of science in its modern form, and Dee's the guy that stands at the crossroads of that. So, now this is important because, for a lot of reasons, and another reason why I wrote the book was to make this very, very clear, that there is a specific tradition with a set series of practices and a set graded system for going from step A to point A to point Z, which is based on the tree of life, and we recognize in, if you've ever seen, who's ever seen like Golden Dawn grades, like Adeptus Minor and Neophyte and things. Okay, so some people. That's really the system. It's a system for, the Western esotericism is a system for repairing human consciousness and taking it from a fragmented, dispersed, the prima materia of a human life as it is, a human being that is subjected to its desires and kind of all over the place, and I don't know what I want to do in my life, I don't know what's, I'm just kind of here, the universe is inert, I feel powerless. Taking somebody like that from a state of lead to a state of gold, and the state of gold is the one that I've hinted at the beginning of this talk, which is understanding that we are in God. The whole world is God, and we are part of God in perfect connection with everything in existence, just as the Buddhists tell us, right? Very similar to Vajrayana Buddhism. By the way, and this, by the way, is the 100% definition of exactly what magic is, and also the most important thing I'm going to say tonight. So if you take away nothing else from this talk, this is the most important thing. The best way to understand the Western magic, I apologize for this in advance. The best way to understand the Western esoteric tradition and Hermeticism and Neoplatonism and all the other things it's been called is the Morrissey lyric, "Nature is a language can't you read." Has anyone ever heard that Smiths song? Raise your hand and say aye. Okay, a couple people. All right, Morrissey, sorry. I apologize in advance. As much as I love the Smiths, it's like, okay, I just had to throw that in there. So the idea of magic is that we are in one thing. The universe is alive. It is conscious. We are part of it. We are connected intrinsically to all of it. As above, so below. We are the mirror of the entire universe. Everything out there in the universe is a mirror of us internally. Has anyone ever seen a picture of a nebula that looks like a human iris? Raise your hand and say aye. Okay, that's a lot of you, right? So this is kind of what I mean by this. But the idea being that we live in a conscious universe that is holographic. And many of you probably know that if you take a hologram and a holographic image and you cut it up into lots of little pieces, like you take out, let's say you take a hologram of R2-D2, sticker, and you cut it up into eight pieces, all 8 of those pieces will contain the entire image of R2-D2, right? And this is how Hermeticists see the world. Every part of reality contains the totality. Or as William Blake later put it, I could see infinity in a grain of sand. And particularly the human body, that if you want to understand God, if you want to understand the universe, then you can also study the human body. And that if the better you're able to understand this, the better you're able to understand what all this is and how it all works, the better you are able to find your place in it. And from there, we have a direct arc to the dangerous and heretical idea of operational magic, which is that if Hermeticism is the idea of seeing the world as one working computer, one operating system with a perfectly guided set of rules, magic is the idea of can we reprogram it, right? Is there a programming language, perhaps, with which we can change reality? So Hermeticists saw nature as a series of nesting analogies, so nature is a language. So the idea that the planet Mars is similar to the human emotion of aggression and dominance seeking, is similar to the color red, is similar to the god Ares, is similar to a hawk, a bird of prey, and so on and so forth. And that all these things are in some sense analogically connected and can be used to influence each other. Or even in the idea of magic, can be used to produce specific effects. So, now, close your eyes again. So imagine yourself, as it were, at Mortlake. Not the Mortlake we're in right now, but the Mortlake that you're in now. Mortlake, of course, was the house of Dr. Dee and John Kelly in the southwest of London, on the banks of the River Thames, a quiet English suburb with clouds floating gently by overhead and the sound of the river gently lapping by the house. And John Dee and Edward Kelly spent day after day sitting in Dee's study behind closed doors with a scrying ball. And a scrying ball is simply a piece of crystal. All that scrying is, which is how they were making contact with angels, is staring into a crystal until you start to kind of trance out and go into an altered state of consciousness as you are now, right? And from that state of altered consciousness, being able to tune in to the subtle realms of reality, the realms that we normally contact only when we're in deep sleep states or in REM states, dreaming consciousness, but doing it while we're awake so that we can have more conscious control over it. Imagine being there and day after day, year after year, seeing angels coming through the scrying ball. And these angels told Dee and Kelly what reality is. They gave them the true secrets of magic, the true nature of the angelic language. They looked at all of the Western esoteric tradition and instructions that had been passed around, and from these corrected them and gave Dee and Kelly the true system of magic through which they were to contact God. And God, as you see, was, as Dee and Kelly saw them, not just a man with a white beard up in the clouds, but imagine and see God as Dee and Kelly saw God, as a whale floating through reality, covered with eyes from head to toe, with a giant cavernous mouth from which echoed the howling sound that Dee and Kelly described as the roaring of a cave of lions. And as they entered through the mouth of the whale, they saw peeled back before them the 30 aethers, the 30 layers of reality peeled back like an onion skin, the layers of consciousness that separate human beings from divinity, from enlightenment, which is the core of this whole thing, just like it is in the Eastern traditions. God the whale. So, day after day, month after month, year after year of talking to angels who told them the real plan, the plan of how they were going to enlighten not just Dee and Kelly, but the entire human race, which is what we're going to talk about now as soon as you begin to come back and open your eyes. Okay. So, the fourth thing we can learn about magic and reality from Dee and Kelly is that it's not about you. The importance of checking your ego at the door. So, and this is a critical point. How many people here have ever done, let's say, a magical ritual for trying to manifest something in your life or get something to happen? Raise your hand and say aye. Okay, so most of you. This is not that. When most people are attracted to magic, they come across chaos magic or the grimoires or various things, and the idea behind all of them is doing rituals to get stuff, a new job, a new relationship, a shiny red car, you know, like The Secret, something like that. This is not that. Enochian magic is very different, and this is why it's been so fundamentally disturbing to so many people. Enochian magic is about humbling you. It works on two levels, sanctification and illumination. Sanctification is the moving aside a human being from their own ego, their own constructed story of who they are, and refitting them with the divine pattern of the great chain of being that I've alluded to. Reorienting them with what they truly should be doing in life instead of following desires here and there and everywhere. The other side of it is illumination, which is taking a unenlightened human being and filling them with wisdom and understanding, showing them what reality really is, and filling them with divine knowledge. But this wasn't just for any old reason. It wasn't just because they liked human beings. The idea was that the angels saw human beings as fallen and unenlightened, and just like with any other spiritual tradition, they wanted enlightenment one person at a time. They wanted human beings to be enlightened. And in order to do that, they wanted Enochian magic spread to the entire world so that people could do it and have a direct DSL connection or fiber, hopefully, connection to the divine realms without the intercessory aid of the church. A dangerous idea. And ultimately, what they truly wanted was to bring about the apocalypse. Now, the apocalypse doesn't mean the destruction of everything. It means the lifting of the veil. It means the final enlightenment through light of all sentient beings, as the Buddhists say. You know, the Buddhists take a vow where they say they will continue to reincarnate until all sentient and insentient beings are liberated. It's the same with the angels. They want totalizing enlightenment for everybody. But the process of that does not involve getting stuff, tchotchkes. People are always constantly doing magic to get tchotchkes. This is not that. So I'm speeding up a bit here. So the fifth thing we can learn from Dee and Kelly is there is a total plan. The angels do have a plan for humanity, and it's very simple. And this is shocking, right? It's something that hasn't been written about, or it's been written about in academic texts, but not in a popular book about magic. And this is a truly shocking idea, and also the most important thing I'm going to say tonight. So if you don't take away anything else from this talk, this is the one to take away. The angels spent 10 years giving Dee and Kelly the system of Enochian magic so that human beings could develop direct lines of communication with the angels, but they did it for this reason. They wanted one totalizing religion for the entire planet that would unify Catholicism, Protestantism, Judaism, paganism, and even Islam under the control of the angels. The angels would be put back in control of the entire planet and assert spiritual control, and that this would be done underneath Elizabeth, that Elizabeth I would be the world sovereign, the world Protestant empress, and that Dee, of course, had already laid the groundwork for this British Empire with his imperial work, but this was to be realigned with Enochian magic, and what they wanted was one world order, one religion, one empire. Now, we might say that that's perhaps fanciful, and it certainly wasn't achieved during Dee and Kelly's lifetime. But when we fast forward, let's say 500 years later, 400 years later, and we look at the spread of the British Empire and how it, for better or worse, brought Christianity across the entire planet, and we look at things like how global capitalism has perhaps become the totalizing world religion, and that we do live in one monoculture. Now, I'm not saying this is good or bad. This is a history book, remember. But once we begin to understand this, that the angels did have a plan for humanity, and they did want, they essentially wanted a spiritual Borg cube. If you remember the Borg cube from Star Trek: The Next Generation. They wanted total dominance, total control, and the reason they wanted that was because they basically were saying, okay, humans have had their chance, we're going to take the wheel. Imagine, in the Old Testament, the angels interact with human beings. They bring the 10 Commandments to Moses. Moses brings out the 10 Commandments and says, okay, I've talked to God at the burning bush. Here's the 10 rules. Do these rules and everything will be fine. I've established the covenant with humanity. As long as you do this, all will be fine. Okay, not so easy. Fast forward several hundred years. And how did that go? Not very well. It's descended into, the covenant has been broken in various places in the Old Testament. So God says, okay, let's try this again. Sends down Christ, whether you believe this was a real figure or not. And, Christ shows up and says, okay, I see you're having some problems following the rules. Okay, you guys have kind of, the letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life. You guys have gotten wrapped up in kind of rules lawyering this. So let's make it easier. Okay, I'm just going to give you one overall commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? And what this means is human consciousnesses are fundamentally the same, right? We're all one consciousness interspersed with different loci, but we're deep down at the level of breath, at the level of awareness, being, bliss, consciousness, as the Hindus put it, or the Sanatana Dharma puts it. We are the same. We're one consciousness expressing itself through different loci, right? So love your neighbor as yourself, because you are another me, right? This is the meaning of that statement. So as long as we remember that and we love each other, you can't really go wrong, because you're not going to be running around killing and maiming and hurting and stealing and all the other commandments. Now, you might have imagined that probably would have worked really well, but, fast forward about 15 minutes and he's nailed up on a piece of wood, and, it's just chaos and mayhem from there. And then fast forward another 100 years and they're using it as an excuse to, pave over whole other cultures and establish the church and misinterpret everything and so on and so forth. Okay. God is nothing if not patient, so let's give it another try. Okay. Islam, right? The Prophet Muhammad. The Archangel Gabriel, who, by the way, is one of the core angels of the Enochian sessions, comes down and says, okay, this time just write down exactly what I'm saying, all right? Just literally just take dictation. You know, you don't change it, don't put your spin on it, you don't get to, you know, I'm not gonna have you speak in parables or whatever, just write, okay? I'll give you exactly what to say, and that's the Quran, which Muhammad spends, you know, a year or so or a couple of years in a cave transcribing, allegedly. And okay, fast forward a few hundred years, that's not going so great either. So we can take perhaps the Enochian sessions as the angels finally saying, okay, look, let's try this on a one-to-one basis. We're gonna give you the technology for establishing the connection directly with us instead of human intermediaries. No more books, no more churches, or at least in addition to that. We're just gonna here's the plug. Stick your finger in the plug and we'll take it from there, right? And the whole idea with Enochian was, and of course to do the Enochian system, you have to build what's called the Holy Table of Practice, which is a 3-foot by 3-foot cube, upon which is a crystal ball, and it's kind of the world's most complicated Ouija board. And in fact, when we see what I might call step-down artifacts of occultism, whether that's crystal balls or numerology or fortune telling or dream analysis or any of these other things that we see kind of in the margins of the newspaper or in, you know, street corner psychics and things like that. These are decayed echoes of the Western esoteric tradition. These things all had a specific purpose within the Western magical system, but over time, those have kind of filtered out and become kind of degenerated echoes. So tarot suddenly becomes not a system for understanding the structure of reality, but now becomes a system for fortune telling. But the Holy Table of Practice is very much like a Ouija board. And they basically say we want one of these in every, you know, house in the world, and we want, just like a TV would be, and we want people using these to make direct contact with us, at least in addition to the structure of the church, so they don't go too far off the deep end. And then using this, Enochian Magic, we're gonna actualize the whole thing. We're gonna bring humanity back to its fundamental state of awareness, pristine, original awareness, as they say in the Dzogchen tradition, enlightenment, and then we're going to wrap up the show. You know, it's over. Monkeys had your chance. Sorry. And that's really what the angels say. And they're saying this in the 15th century. They're saying the end is near, and this is now the 6th thing we can learn from Dee and Kelly. The end of the world is nigh. And the angels are saying, the time of Antichrist is here. The time of total spiritual degradation, the Kali Yuga, as is said in Sanatana Dharma. And the end of the world is coming. Now, this is always what happens with the end of the world. People always think it's tied to a specific date. So Dee and Kelly thought that it was going to happen in 1588. Later, people thought that it would happen in 1688. Ronald Reagan thought it would happen in 1988. But humans always think that the apocalypse is coming at a specific date, and we still see people in the news, you know, whatever that guy's name, Harold something, who was saying the end of the world was going to be a couple of years ago. It's not a date. The end of the world, as many people have pointed out, is an ongoing process, right? It's the final disintegration of the human project. It's the final disintegration of human consciousness to its most debased point, to a point of unrealization and disconnection from the traditional order, the great chain of being. Where now, if we look around, people don't even believe in the spiritual realm at all anymore. They certainly don't believe in religion. They don't believe in that there's really anything or any meaning to life outside of pure materialism and materialist science, and which is great, right? But is only part of the big picture. And they don't believe that there is anything outside of, living for today and getting a few more Instagram followers and fulfilling our base needs, right? So this is what they were writing about in the scriptures as the end of the world. It's what the Hindu sages were writing about with the Kali Yuga. Or if you read the Hindu scriptures on the Kali Yuga, they basically give a perfect spot-on description of the world as it is now. They say, just as it is in the book of Revelation, the waters will be poisoned, the airs will be poisoned, people will have only filth to eat, right? Processed food, all chemicals, all of this. People will no longer have access to real spiritual traditions. People will openly worship demons, right? And this is the nadir of human, nadir, not Ralph Nader, but the lowest point of human, the arc of human progress. And this is a truly disturbing thing that we get from traditional forms of esoteric spirituality, whether it's Dee or some of the Hindu systems, which is that human beings are not progressing, right? We're not, as the New Age assures us in airbrushed tones of wanting to sell us some crystals or whatever. The New Age assures us that we're all progressing to some great spiritual moment of awakening and enlightenment. That it used to be 2012. I don't know what people say now, but we're progressing to, it's going to be great. It's out in the future. Everyone's waking up. We're all getting totally, more conscious. It's not so, right? Human beings are receding and digressing into baser and baser and baser matter and materialism. And the message of the angels is this is the end of the world, right? The end of the world is not, nuclear weapons falling out of the sky. It's when human beings have forgotten their true nature, right? And out of the forgetfulness of human beings lose the golden thread. They forget what they are, which is divinity manifest in flesh, right? With direct connection back to everything else, everything that I've just said. And when human beings forget who they are, and from that all other evils proceed. Because when you forget your own divine nature, when you forget that we're all one consciousness, how much easier does it become to hurt other people? How much easier does it become to pump chemicals into the environment? How much easier does it become to torment and torture animals for food or cosmetics or whatever, How much easier does it become to destroy the Garden of Eden for short-term profit? And not to make it political, that's only one example, right? But when we forget who we are and we think there's only matter, then it becomes easier you start to see other people as things. And this is forgetfulness. In Hinduism they say evil is basically stupidity. Ignorance, it's stupidity. It's not being aware of the nature of reality. And one of the things that you get if you interact with people in other cultures, non-Western cultures, is in a lot of places like Thailand, for instance, or certain parts of India, not to over-romanticize, but people get it. They remember that. They haven't lost the thread. In some cases, not all cases, obviously. So the message of the angels is, if it's the end of the world, then it's time to wrap it up. It's time to start exercising some extreme measures, in this case, Enochian magic, to wake people back up and restart the siphon back in the other direction, right? So instead of the siphon pouring out and wasting all of human potential, it restarts in the other direction and goes back up towards its parent source, backwards through history instead of forwards. Okay. So number 7, the last one. Thank you for bearing with me here, as we've been all over the known universe. This is no different. The Western occult tradition is no different from the mainstream Western political project. This is shocking to realize. If you look at the American evangelicals, certainly for the last 100 years, the evangelical right has really been on the same page here, just not in a mystical way. And now, obviously, Dee's ideas, we can see Dee's ideas echoing into the creation of America, the creation of the British Empire, the creation of the American Empire, but we can also see it in American foreign policy in the Middle East. And what you have to realize if you want to understand the world is that the people in charge of the show, for instance, Ronald Reagan, Mike Pence, people like this, have been trying to do this quite directly. The people in charge of in not all cases, but in many cases, of setting Western foreign policy have very literally believed that we are in the end of the world and that the events of the apocalypse can be hastened physically by progressing the timeline towards apocalypse. And this, I argue in the book, is the wrong interpretation because it's a physical interpretation of it and literal interpretation rather than an esoteric interpretation. But when you consider things, for instance, like Ronald Reagan in the 1980s leading the world into a mutually assured destruction with Russia, or a policy of mutually assured destruction, and telling the world that it was his divinely ordained role to shepherd America through the end times in confrontation with Gog and Magog, which is from the book of Daniel, but he said represented Russia. When you consider that the reason we went into Iraq, both for the first and second Iraq wars, was this idea of basically terraforming the Middle East to prompt the events of the book of Revelation to happen. George W. Bush very much believed this, as it's called, dispensationalist view of religious interventionalism, where Bush very famously, the second Bush very famously said to Jacques Chirac, the French prime minister, that when I look at the Middle East and Iraq, I see Gog and Magog at work, and it's happening again now. It's always happening now with the invasion of Syria, which fulfills prophecy in the book of Isaiah, and it's quite terrifying and sobering to realize that these aren't just ideas that are sitting in books. These are ideas that people with nuclear weapons are taking quite seriously. And it's sobering to realize that, for instance, if we had come to worldwide thermonuclear Armageddon in the 1980s, all of the missiles propelling the nukes would literally have been propelled by the jet fuel designed by Jack Parsons, right? And so we could be here for another hour, and I'll mercifully spare you getting into the details on the history. But I just want to hint at this so you can follow up on it in the book, that the Western esoteric tradition and exoteric, the religions and the apocalyptic religions and mainstream political movements have all been on the same page, which is the advancement of the world towards the apocalypse, literally, which is why everything is so fucked. And I argue in the book that it's way too literalist for obvious reasons. So, all right. So I've been all over the place, but the reason that I structured this talk in this way is I didn't want to just talk at you about who John Dee was for an hour. I've done tons of podcasts. You can read the book. It's like, okay, like I could have literally sat here talking about, he went and worked for this king and then they did the scrying session. It would be boring as fuck, right? So what I wanted to do instead was present to you the core ideas that surfaced from working on this book and why they're important and why they relate to us now. And those can all be followed up on in John Dee and the Empire of Angels. So look the other way. And on that note, thank you very much. I'll take it. Look backwards, not forwards. Okay.